It's another Thunder Thursday here on News OK Live. I'm Mike Sherman, sports editor of the Oklahoman, here with a portion of our Thunder coverage team. Joining me from his home in downtown Oklahoma City, Thunder beat writer Anthony Slater.
What's up?
From Stillwater, Oklahoma, where she's waiting to talk to the suddenly resurgent, I don't think it's the word, but showing signs of life, Oklahoma State Cowboy basketball players. And Coach, it's Jenny Carlson. Hi, Jenny.
Greetings, everybody.
I'd say surprising.
Surprising is a good adjective. Okay.
That's a good word.
And I saw some evidence, technological evidence, that our beat writer Darnell Mayberry from Houston, where he'll be covering tonight's Thunder-Houston game, is trying to join us. We'll get him in just a second. Anthony, let's start with you. The siesta is over. A long midwinter break for the Oklahoma City's Thunder is over. They play tonight on TNT against the Houston Rockets. Anthony, what do you think we're going to see different about the Thunder?
I would assume you're going to see energy, maybe a little bit more rhythm coming out of this team. They've kind of been able to stew for about 5 days and realize where they are in the standings. And, you know, they're getting a lot more they had 4 or 5 practices over the last week, when in the first 2 months of the season they may not have even had 4 or 5 practices where they had 5-on-5 going. So I think that'll help them. I do think they're going to be a little bit rejuvenated coming off this break. And they got 2 games on national TV, TNT tonight against the Rockets, and then tomorrow at home against the Warriors on ESPN, to kind of make a little bit of a statement that, hey, don't count us out just yet.
Darnell, the Thunder not ready for prime time when the season broke. Partially, it's a break of a Jones or a Jones fracture, to be more specific. That was Kevin Durant's injury, then Russell Westbrook. Now comes a chance to hit the reset button. Have they found that reset button?
Ask me about 9 o'clock tonight. I'll give you a better answer then. It depends on what happens. I mean, they got to play a good team in Houston down here, and then they follow that up with a good team at home against the Golden State Warriors. So, they got their work cut out for them. I'm not ready to say that they've turned the corner just because they had 5 days of practice. They've had 2 or 3 months now, and they still seem to be shaky offensively, inconsistent defensively. So, I'm not going to just say 5 days of practice is going to right the ship.
Jenny, you wrote about this today, how the Thunder acts with Kendrick Perkins on the court. You point out that he's the adult in the room, the adult on defense. They play better defense with him on the court. What's a bigger problem right now for this team? Is it the offense that is very Kevin Durant superstar, Russell Westbrook superstar focused, or the defense where nobody can seem to stay in front of anybody for any kind of prolonged amount of time?
I'm going to go with the defense. Darnell and I even talked about this yesterday in the office, and I do think it's the defense, because the offense, clearly it's a problem. I mean, there's just not enough ball movement. They've sort of reverted back to hero ball and in too many instances. But the defense, to me, is more about effort and accountability and some of those things. And they could really help themselves if they could get some easy run-out baskets in transition through their defense. And right now, they're not getting much anything that way. So to me, that's more problematic. They could really help themselves offensively if they could get some easier baskets from their defense. And at this point, that's just not happening.
Anthony, Darnell, either of you guys got a differing opinion from that?
I'd say long term. I'd agree that the defense may be a bigger issue right now, but I think long term, I think the offense is more of a worry. I think the defense is just going to be about energy and effort, and I think they better figure that out. But I think offense structurally, I think maybe you just are concerned if they'll ever get to this ball movement, or if in the key moments this season they will stick with their star heavy, isolation heavy type offense. So I think just long term, I'm more concerned about the offense.
Darnell, I know how you're going to vote because I read how you voted last Friday in a passionate post, I think, on newsok.com, a Thunder Rumblings post, the headline of which we're 7 years into this and have yet to find say the headline again for me.
A sensible offense. And you almost said 17 years. It's only 7, but it certainly feels like 17.
Darnell, what was behind that blog?
Well, you called it passionate. I just think it was honest. I mean, I think it's something that needed to be said, something that no one else is saying. When I say no one, I mean, I'm talking about people on the team. Who cares what we in the media have to say? I think people on the team need to start holding each other accountable and saying, hey, we need to start trusting the system, trusting each other, moving the ball, doing things better offensively that's going to get everyone involved and make us a tougher team to guard. And that just hasn't happened consistently over these 7 seasons that they've been here. So, we keep hearing about it, and it's just time that they actually start doing it and doing it consistently.
Jenny, is it scheme? Is it more scheme or is it more personnel?
I don't think Jenny's there.
Okay, Anthony, you ask it. Anthony, Jenny had to go to the interviews for OSU basketball. What about it, Anthony? More scheme or personnel?
I'd say scheme and just allowance. Like they just allow the superstars to kind of just go rogue at times, and I mean, we've talked plenty about Westbrook and that type of stuff. So I think it's just more than personnel, because I mean, we've seen this offense. I mean, what have they been the last 4 or 5 years? I mean, they're typically top 5 in the league, and their personnel is 2 of the best players in the league. So I don't think personnel-wise it's that big an issue. I don't think their roster is that much changed than it has been in the past. So, I mean, I think it just goes back to the scheme and just kind of a lack of creativity and a lack of, ball movement, which we, always talk about.
Anthony, Darnell, the lack of additional two-way players. Of course, they've got 3 of them. Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, Serge Ibaka. But Andre Robertson seems to be sort of where the rubber meets the road here. There's a lot of offensive limitations that he has. Is there anything to the excuse that in late in games with Robertson out there, somebody has to make something happen, and he's an incredible liability just because he can't hit an open shot?
Yeah, well, I mean, he doesn't really close games, to be honest. I mean, I haven't looked at the numbers, but I can't really remember many games this season when they've had their full complement of shooting guards where he is the guy closing. It's either going to be Reggie Jackson. Sometimes it's Anthony Morrow when he's hot. So, yeah, I mean, maybe that's an issue earlier in games. But the thing is, Robertson does do some decent stuff offensively, which is cut back door, flying for rebounds. But I feel like his stuff's more predicated on having a ball movement type offense where he can, things are moving around, the defense is moving around, and then he finds a little crevice or a little seam. And the way they're playing, which is isolation heavy, spread the guys out on the wing, does not fit how Andre Robertson plays offense. And that's why a lot of times he can't close games, and their defense isn't as good late in games because they have to have guys out there that can shoot, because that's all the other guys outside of Westbrook and Durant can do.
Darnell, I think your piece today on Dion Waiters sort of changed my mind. You point out that Dion Waiters is pretty dang good shooting spot-up shots, that he can spread the court. That is, him in the left corner and Anthony Morrow in the right corner give the Thunder all kinds of possibilities. We haven't really seen what he can do for the offense yet. Are we about to?
Yeah, whether they like it or not, whether we like it or not, whether they want him to or not, I think he's going to get up shots. That's just who he is and what he does. I think Scott Brooks has the difficult challenge of trying to rein that in and get the most out of him while trying to limit his weaknesses, pulling out those strengths and limiting his weakness. That's what you want to do with every player, but it's going to be particularly difficult with Dion Waiters because he's so confident in himself. He believes in himself so much that he feels like he can get his shot whenever he wants. And generally, just in terms of the way he plays, it looks like he feels like he's going to get a good shot and it's going to go in and no one can stop him from scoring. So getting him to fit in the offense and do things that really would benefit everyone else on the floor, I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. But I threw a lot of numbers out in that story today, and I felt like there's definitely some ways where you can see Dion Waiters potentially helping this team. It's just a matter of whether he'll be willing to sacrifice his game in some ways and do those things.
Anthony, Dion Waiters helps the Thunder most by doing what?
Being at least mildly a two-way player, because if you look at the shooting guard options, I mean, we've talked about this. We talked about this on the podcast. We've talked about this personally. But I mean, Anthony Morrow, extremely offensive minded. Reggie Jackson, he's shown to be extremely offensive minded. Jeremy Lamb, if you even consider him still in the rotation, he's extremely on the offensive side. And then obviously Andre Robertson is completely 180 on that one. He's extremely defensively. Dion Waiters, he's not a great defender, but he gets steals. I think he's like the top guy off the bench this season getting steals. He seems to enjoy pressuring the ball and kind of wrecking a little bit of havoc. He falls asleep off the ball. But I just think he's their best option to say, hey, here's a guy that we know can help us offensively, and he can also do a little bit of stuff defensively. So I think that in that sense, I think he just gives them a more natural guy to play late in games.
Darnell, if I gave you 3 choices and you have to pick one, here's what they are. Dion Waiters is Reggie Jackson's replacement, a poor man's James Harden as a blender, or Oklahoma City's microwave, a.k.a. their version of Vinnie Johnson. Which of these 3 is more likely?
I'm going to say A, just because, the writing is on the wall for Reggie Jackson. Kevin Durant, his comments today at shoot-around saying, this isn't daycare. We're not babysitting anybody. That didn't sound good. I think there's growing frustration with Reggie Jackson from the front office to the coaching staff, on down the line to the players, his teammates. So, I just think that he's not long for Oklahoma City anymore. And Dion Waiters' arrival really, I think, spells the end for Reggie Jackson in a Thunder uniform.
Anthony, this is what happened with Jeff Green. He was at this point in his restricted free agency looming. Thunder traded him in a big trade that sort of reshaped this franchise. What could the Thunder reasonably expect? What kind of return could it get on Reggie Jackson if they flip him by the trade deadline next month?
I don't think really a great one, and that's why I don't think you've seen him moved to this point. You mentioned Jeff Green. He brought in a starting center who's been a staple of this franchise ever since. Reggie Jackson, I don't see him bringing in more than maybe maybe if you add some contracts to it. But the problem is, on the other end of things, the only teams that are going to want Reggie Jackson and what Reggie Jackson wants to go to, which is a team he can be a starting point guard, which there's not many that will make him that. They're teams that are out of the race already, typically, like a Knicks team like that. And they're not going to – why would they want to give up assets for Reggie Jackson now when they think, hey, maybe we could just sign him in the offseason? So that's kind of where you struggle seeing the Thunder bring back anything in that regard. I kind of just think they may just play this thing out unless they're super worried about chemistry. May just play this thing out and then let him walk in the offseason.
Darnell, what is the best case? Answering Anthony's question, why would somebody trade for Reggie Jackson now?
To get his restricted free agency rights. You want to be able to have the option to keep him and maybe even keep him at a discounted rate as opposed to having to throw money at him next summer more than you might have been able to, or more than you might have had to spend if you had him in your organization already. So I think that's one of the biggest benefits. But Slater's right. It's going to be a hard sell for a team to give up assets for a guy who's not guaranteed to stay and that they can actually just go out there and get next summer. So it's going to be tricky. The fact that he makes $2.2 million, there's not a lot of players out there that is actually going to make the Thunder better or even give the Thunder equal value in exchange for Reggie Jackson if they do a trade. So it's a tough trade to make work, but I think the key word is chemistry. If the chemistry is so bad that the Thunder has to make a move and get rid of Reggie Jackson just to keep that locker room stable, then I think they have to do that. You can't run the risk of ruining a championship caliber team this year based off of the actions and the attitude of one guy.
Do we see any signs to this point that is what's happening or what is starting to happen?
I wouldn't say that's really happened so far. I do think that it's becoming a little bit of a distraction, but I wouldn't say that Reggie Jackson is cancerous in any way just yet. If this thing keeps up where Dion Waiters is playing nearly twice as many minutes as him and he's not in that closer role anymore, then yeah, I think Reggie Jackson will start to sulk even more and become more of a problem. But right now, I don't think that's much of an issue.
I don't think it's as much an issue. Like, I don't think it's really affecting other people's play. I don't think it's affecting Kevin Durant's play, Westbrook's play, or anything like that. I just think it's affecting Reggie Jackson's play. And he was such an important piece of the Thunder, and now he's just been pretty bad lately. And that's where I think it's affecting the team. It's strictly that it's affected Jackson's play.
Guys, we've been on a Reggie Jackson roller coaster before, though. His rookie year had some flashes. Of course, that was the days of the sort of odd dribbling like he was in traffic when he wasn't. Then they got Derek Fisher, put him on in street clothes, went to the NBA Finals. The next year, when Russell Westbrook goes down in the playoffs, Reggie is out there running the point. And, of course, last year in the playoffs, saves a game at Memphis. Give me a percentage chance. What's the chance of there being an upturn? The Reggie Jackson roller coaster reversing course and going on a climb again. Anthony?
I'll say 50. I mean, I could see it happening, and I think the main thing the Thunder need, if they're going to keep him, the main thing they need to preach to him is, hey, you want to get your money. You want to get trust from other teams that they'll make you their starting point guard. You want this payday in the offseason. You better start playing a lot better. I mean, you're going to have the stage. This team is assuming going to have, the playoff stage. I mean, his go-to game right now that people remember is that 32-point savior game he had in the Memphis series last year. Say, hey, maybe you'll have a game or two like that where, you'll reiterate to teams, and maybe that'll earn you $2 million per year. So if they can convince him of that, and if he can, think that in his mind, I mean, maybe he does turn this thing around.
What about it, Darnell? Play the percentages.
I'm going to go 15%. He's not happy. He hasn't been effective. And there's no sense in paying a guy upwards of $12 million to do something that three other guys on the team can do, which is create with the ball in his hands and get to the basket, make plays for himself and others. So I just don't see any way that they want to keep him around a year beyond this, even if he signs a qualifying offer. If someone comes at him with an offer sheet in restricted free agency, I just see them possibly even letting him walk. Sam Presti rarely likes to, he does not like to let assets go without getting something in exchange. But this is a rare situation, one that the Thunder has never been in. I see them cutting their ties and just letting him move on if they feel that the chemistry is such to where he just doesn't belong in Oklahoma City anymore.
Hey, that wasn't – I know you didn't answer the question, though.
I said 15%.
No. I mean, you were answering if you think he'll be back, right? The question was, do you think the rest of the season he can turn this around? What's the percentage?
That's my answer, 15%. I don't see it happening.
I mean, just from an individual standpoint, like, where do you think he's at? Do you think he can, in his mind, turn it around in his mind, knowing that regardless of if they're keeping him next year, I mean, this is for some individual pride and for maybe some money.
Yeah, he's not happy. He hasn't been effective, and now Dion Waiters, in his second game with the Thunder, played twice as many minutes as Reggie Jackson, including the final 8.5 in crunch time. I just don't see that as a recipe for success for Reggie Jackson.
We'll go with 15. I'd be remiss if we left the Reggie Jackson topic without asking you this: chances that Jose Calderon will play for the Thunder this year?
I'm going to go 5. I mean, yeah, maybe the Knicks are selling him off, but I really just don't see the Thunder, Sam Presti, adding a 32-year-old guy who has locked in money, $7 million next year and $7 million in 2006. The year the offseason they're supposed to sign Kevin Durant. I just don't see him locking in an older guy that's way older than the core. I think he'd become the second oldest player on the team behind Nick Collison. I just don't see them wanting to add that deal.
How about it, Darnell? And I don't like the way Anthony says 32. I'm 52. So anyway, ease off of that. Go ahead, Darnell.
He'll get there. I'm with him, though, 5%. I don't see it, and I think Slater nailed on the head. The money is the biggest issue. You don't want to add a guy with $14 million on his contract over the next 2 years, especially when you have the Kevin Durant situation coming up. Even though the money's going up, you'd rather spend that money elsewhere as opposed to paying $7 million for your backup point guard who can't play defense and is aging.
Okay, tonight, it's James Harden, our good friend Jimmy H., facing off against Oklahoma City. Darnell, he looks like an MVP candidate. Some people think he is the MVP. Should this just make Oklahoma City fans feel even worse about the Harden trade? Put James Harden's performance into perspective in light of the Oklahoma City Thunder's struggles.
He's the man down here. He would not have been the man in Oklahoma City playing next to Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. As good as he is, he's still not as good as Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. I rate those two guys as the second and third best players in the league. The thing that Oklahoma City fans have to remember is that the James Harden you see now is not the James Harden you would have seen had he stayed in Oklahoma City. So that's the biggest thing and the important thing. You can't judge it by what he's doing, having the ball in his hands 75% of the time or whatever it might be in Houston. You got to analyze it and say this is what he would have had to do next to Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. So what he's doing down here is great, but he would not have been able to do the same thing with the Thunder.
Darnell, Dr. Phil would be proud. Anthony, what's the right way to look at Jimmy H?
I mean, I was going to say, regardless of all those things, which are true, it's still got to be tough to look at him. I mean, you're talking about, some would argue Russell Westbrook's the best point guard in the league. Well, I mean, I'm not going to say that now because I'll just set off an alarm in Darnell's hotel room. But, I mean, you have arguably the best point guard in the league. You have, I'd say, arguably probably the best, small forward. I guess, I mean, let's say you got
Whoa.
Well, let's say you got a top 2 point guard. Can we say top 2 point guard in Russell Westbrook?
I'm tripping on the small forward part. Where were you going with that?
Top 2. I mean, just LeBron. I mean, we'll see with LeBron coming off injury, but I guess we got to see with Durant. But you have a top 2 small forward, a top 2 point guard, and you may have, and let's say you still had Harden. He's a top shooting guard in the league now. I know the whole financial thing and everything you're saying. Harden would still probably be coming off the bench, and honestly, Harden probably still wouldn't be here even if they kept him that one season. Because we would have had even worse Reggie Jackson situation, but it's just got to be tough to look at a guy that used to be on this team that people thought was going to be going forward, and he really is probably the best shooting guard in the league. A top 3 MVP candidate right now. Over 2 guys have been hurt.
I'll counter that by saying, and I would probably be speaking for a lot of Thunder fans, is how many times has James Harden been out of the first round with Houston?
Okay, Chris Paul's never Chris Paul last year, your best point guard in the league, been out of the first round. I think once last year.
We're not talking about Chris Paul. We're talking about.
I'm just saying it
may or may not be tough for Thunder fans to see what James Harden is doing. Yeah, he's having a great career in Houston, but how many times has he been out of the first round? That's the counter argument to okay, you got what you wanted. Now, how many championships are you going to win?
I mean, I hate that argument.
That actually kind of matters.
I mean, regardless. I mean, he's been in there 3 years. They've finally built a team around him. I mean, I'm just talking about strictly the player. James Harden, he's a great player. Would you say he's the best shooting guard in the league?
I think Klay Thompson would have something to say about that.
You know what Klay Thompson should say? Yes, he is. That's what Klay Thompson should say.
Yes.
Well, then Klay Thompson actually knows how to spell defense.
Hey,
let's see if James Harden can actually play some defense someday.
Hey, guys.
James Harden's not going to need to play a lot of defense tonight, guarding Andre.
Boy, I'm so glad we're all over the James Harden deal, aren't you guys? Hey,
it's fun to debate. That's what we do. We don't need to get over things. We write what-ifs and oral histories, and it's our job.
Speaking of our job, there's a job of covering some games coming up. Remember those basketball games? The Thunder has 5 in the next 7 days. Here they are, guys. At Houston, Golden State, at Orlando, at Miami, at Washington. A lot of ats. Darnell, what does the Thunder need to do in those next 5 games?
I'm not sure. I got them winning these next 2. I mean, Houston had a back-to-back. They're on the second night of a back-to-back, so they're coming here. They could be tired. I got the Thunder winning against Houston and then winning at home against Golden State. You don't want to lose 4 times to those guys this year. So that's why I got the Thunder going 2-0 Thursday, Friday, excuse me. And then after that, it's kind of a crapshoot. Atlanta is really good. Washington, the Thunder struggles to perform well whenever they go to D.C. for whatever reason. And then who's after that?
Well, I missed a game in there. I missed Orlando.
Orlando. I skipped it. Orlando,
at Miami, at Washington. That's the next 5.
Orlando, Miami, Washington.
I think
I think they'll get Miami, and I think they'll get Washington. So I'm going to say 4-1. How's that for optimistic?
Wow, pretty optimistic. Hey, Darnell, this takes us back to the days of the Hornets. Remember those blogs when you were projecting West Coast road trips?
Yeah, that wasn't good.
I didn't make you. I'm not going to make you now. But, Anthony, what does the Thunder need to do in this stretch?
I'm going to extend that, I believe, 2 more games beyond, because that'll go through that 5-game trip. And you got the Atlanta Hawks, who are 24-2 in the last 26 games, and then the Cavs, I think, to end that road trip. I think they can, and I think they need to go 5-2 over the next 7 games. I think that'll be a good mark, and I think that will prove to a lot of people, because they play a lot of tough games in that stretch, road games, that, this is still a championship level type team that's going to turn it on in the second half. So I'm looking for a 5-2 record.
It's a lot of winning for a team that hasn't done a ton of it. The Thunder is 5-4 in its last 9 games. That's a different gear. Guys, let's end it up here. The old saying, misery loves company. All anybody in Oklahoma City might need to do is to look at what's going on in Cleveland. Darnell, make sense of LeBron James' homecoming thus far for us.
I can't. I wish I could. I can't. I think everyone knew that it wasn't going to be smooth sailing. Those were a lot of young guys, Kyrie Irving, Tristan Thompson. They got rid of Deion Waiters. Kevin Love had never really competed for anything in the NBA that was big. So it's really shocking that they're this bad. A game under 500 like the Thunder, and they haven't had as many injuries. Anderson Varejão's been lost for the season. But it's really kind of mind-boggling that they're struggling this much, especially in the Eastern Conference.
Anthony, have we just forgotten sort of how much play in the line there is with LeBron James? I mean, if we look back at some of his sort of antics when he was at Cleveland the first time, the opportunities when they let him play general manager, some of the things that were said and mentioned, and now comes Christmas Day conversation on the scorer's table with Dwayne Wade, the shove of the coach. Apparently Tyronn Lue is calling timeouts behind David Blatt's back. Will this end badly for Cleveland?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not around it, so I don't know how much of it's overblown and how much of it's like legitimate, issues within the team. The good thing, Darnell mentioned it, I mean, it's bad that where their record is what they are, especially playing in the Eastern Conference, but they are in the Eastern Conference, so they do have a little bit of time to figure it out. They're still very talented. To me, I still see a team that's going to at least make the Eastern Conference Finals this season, and then I think from there, maybe, if they lose, if they can go maybe like 6 games with the Bulls and end the season playing a little bit better, then I think that'll ease some of the worry. But I mean, it is teetering on maybe heading towards disaster. We'll see. I don't think it'll reach that level, but I really didn't think it was. I would have said 0% chance early in the season. Now I mean, this was such a feel-good story. And now it's, so quickly turned to like maybe a disaster.
Guys, that's all for this edition of Thunder Thursdays, but you can stay with the best coverage team anywhere, every day is okay, and every morning in the Oklahoman. And of course, Thunder Thursdays are brought to you by our good friends at Wheeler Chevrolet. Take that drive down I-40, save yourself some time and money. Enjoy the game.